Good morning. Welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. Today, we're going to look at some of the different kinds of high points in the Gospel of Matthew. You may remember, excuse me, that we're looking at significant events that happened on mountains in Matthew. And yesterday, we looked at the Mount of Temptation. Today, we're going to look at three mountains of ministry, mountains where significant things happened as Jesus taught and served among the people. What happens on the first mountain begins in chapter 5 of Matthew and goes all the way through the end of chapter 7. Jesus has a large crowd following him, and he sits down and begins to teach. And we've come to call this the Sermon on the Mount. It's well known for many things. It begins with the Beatitudes, things like, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." There are many sayings that start with, "You have heard that it was said, but then I say to you." And then Jesus would go on to interpret things like anger and vengeance. And he would not just interpret them, he'd reinterpret them. And he would spell out a life of love for one another as what God's kingdom is like. He talks about false piety and trusting God and a whole lot more. It was a high point in the ministry of Jesus. The second mountain today is found in Matthew 14, verse 23. It's not mentioned much, but here Jesus dismissed the crowds and sent his disciples away, and meanwhile he went up on a mountain to pray. Prayer was such a central part of life for Jesus. He spent a lot of time in prayer, and I think this mountain encourages us to spend deep time in prayer too. Oh, and this story ends with Jesus walking on the water, a clear sign of who he is as God's Son. The third mountain we'll look at today is in Matthew 15, 29 through 31. I'm going to read that one for you. After Jesus had left that place, he passed along the Sea of Galilee, and he went up the mountain where he sat down. Great crowds came to him, bringing with him the lame, the maimed, the blind, the mute, and many others. They put them at his feet, and he cured them, so that the crowd was amazed when they saw the mute speaking and the maimed whole, the lame walking, and the blind seeing. And they praised the God of Israel. Like the Sermon on the Mount, here Jesus sits down and begins to teach the crowds, but it's not just teaching that he does. He also heals the lame, the maimed, the blind, the mute, and many others. And so on this mountain, Jesus expresses the love and compassion of God for all who suffer. The high point is that God is love, and God reaches into our lives with that love. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.